A conference on environmental governance has been organized to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the Central Environmental Authority, Sri Lanka. In this session, you will be enlightened on the importance of environment education. The first step in protecting and conserving a healthy environment is to educate and create awareness among the various target groups in general public to obtain their fullest support. Thereby, these research findings on environment education, communication, and promotion will provide a more practical approach and a mere guide in conserving our environment. With that, I will now introduce to you the keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Jayantha Vattavidhanam. He is a prominent zoologist in the country who has received the Presidential Award for his research findings. He's an author of a large number of articles for the local newspapers and magazines, and has also narrated the animal documentary Macro World. Dr. Vattavidhanam has also served as a chairman at the Science Popularizing National Science Foundation in Sri Lanka. He is currently a senior lecturer of zoology at the Open University of Sri Lanka. So let me warmly welcome Dr. Jayantha Vattavidhanam to deliver his keynote speech.
Good afternoon. Professor Wandi Jayakodi, co-chair, and all distinguished panel members of the session on environment education, communication, and promotion. It is my privilege and pleasure to be here to share some of the ideas with you all on this topic, environment education, communication, and promotion. Of course, first two, education and communication, are a bit more or less similar in some sense. And again, there are differences we can discuss, and promotion, of course, by educating and communicating, we can promote the environment. When I think about this topic, I can't forget the statement or advice given by Arhat Mahinda to then King Devanampiyatissa. He said, all living beings, beasts, birds, and all living beings have equal right as you to move around this country. And also, this country belongs to all living beings. My friends, all living beings includes plants, animals, and microbes. And finally, he said, King, oh great King, you are just the guardian of the land and the people and all living beings, not the ruler. So that's the advice and the education received by the king more than 2000 years back. And also, when we think about when we think about the advisors, please don't change, I will change, right? Let me change. So there's a saying in Maha Assarohaka Jataka, Yassa Rukkassa Chayaya Nisideya Sayeva, Tassa Sakang Banjaya Mitta Dubbehi Papako. If someone enjoyed the shade of a tree by sitting underneath or lying, if the same person cut even a branch of a tree, is a fake friend. So everywhere in our Buddhist teaching, we can point out large number of advices on protecting the environment. There's a Chinese saying here, if you think about a year, you plant paddy. If you think few years, you plant a tree. But if you think about a century, you have to educate the public. So education is key. So when we move into environment education, so you can read that it is purely on the environment, how it affects the environment, how we can protect the environment, how we can learn about the environment, how can we sensitive to environment. And if we go forward, you can see the details of this. Let me have the presentation here also. It's very difficult to read the screen. It's far away. Shall we turn on this screen as well? Otherwise, it's very difficult to read the screen. Please turn on this one. Get the presentation. Okay, now it's okay. The components of environmental education that you can see the screen. The awareness and sensitivity, and also knowledge and understanding. Awareness and sensitivity to the environment and environmental challenges, and also knowledge and understanding of the environment and environmental challenges, and there's an attitude and skill part also there. So according to the Bloom's taxonomy on education, we know that knowledge itself doesn't do anything. You need to have at least another two components, skills and attitudes. Attitude is the third and very important component, how we value the different things. Again, here, attitude of concern for the environment and motivation to improve or maintain the environmental quality. That attitude is very important, not just the knowledge. Then here that we can compare environmental information and environmental education. If you think very clearly, environmental education increases the public awareness and knowledge on environmental issues. But just giving information that provide facts or opinions about the environmental issues only. Then the very important point, environmental education does teach individuals critical thinking and also problem solving and decision making skills. That's a very important part in education, environmental education. And just giving information does not necessarily develop those skills. And the other difference between environmental education and communication, environmental education does not advocate particular viewpoint. They empower. Education, environmental education always empower a person, empower individuals with skills to solve problems and also critical thinking. So environmental information is one thing, environmental communication is again a different thing. So environmental education, man as a part and parcel of the environment introduce various important points. But after that, all the important places got polluted because of general public just started going there. So we discussed at the time also. So information is inadequate, not substantial. Then everybody goes. If you give more details, important people, I mean, needy people only visit those places. And also responsiveness. Respond to the queries and concerns of interested parties and make interested parties aware of how their queries and concerns have been addressed. You have to have, they have to develop confidence on you. And also, number 5, clarity. These communications, approaches, and language should be understandable to interested parties to minimize ambiguity. So if your interested party is a fishing group, fishermen, that you have to use different language enabling them to understand fully what you are saying, what you are communicating. So rather than going to theory, I like to bring a story in front of you. A well-known story, story of Silent Spring by Rachel Louis Carson. So this gives a lot of information about the subject. She was born in 1907 in rural Pennsylvania and grew up surrounded by nature. And she attended to Pennsylvania College of Women, and then at the Woodhall Oceanographic Institute, very reputed institute, before entering the Masters in Zoology from Johns Hopkins University. So then, after graduation, she became the second woman to be hired by US Fish and Wildlife Service in 1936, and where she worked for 15 years. This is Rachel Louis Carson. Then there she used her scientific expertise and love of writing to develop brochures and radio programs to educate and inform the public. We know that a large number of environmental communicators are here with us now. Love to write, love to develop brochures. That's very, very important. Wholehearted engagement, not as a job. It should come from your bottom of the heart. And she eventually became editor-in-chief of US Fish and Wildlife Service publication. Then, consequence of Silent Spring. That's very important to go through what has happened after the Silent Spring. Before her book, Silent Spring, was published in 1962, Rachel Carson knew it would be controversial because in 1960s was the year that world produced highest number of pesticides and insecticides, and also that insecticide and pesticide with highest poisonous. Now we don't use those. Then Carson had written about how the reckless use of pesticide was contaminating the natural environment and slowly poisoning living things. She was frightened because she was sensitive at that time. She knew her claims would surprise 99 out of 100 people. Many people, especially those in the chemical industry, would undoubtedly feel threatened by her book. She knew that. Just like Darwin. Darwin waited 5 years to publish his book. Same way, we all should think about this. If we are doing this business, environmental communication, we also think the same way. Then she knew these people would attack her and try to discredit her writing. But this did not stop her. Carson believed in her book. That's very important. When we write something, when we say something, if we produce something, we have to believe on it, wholeheartedly believe on it. And then only we can transfer our thinking to the other people, listeners. She wanted to let the public know the fact about pesticide, and she hoped it would lead to stricter environmental laws. She wanted to change the laws, make it stricter. Carson had no idea just how popular and influential her book would become. Then, soon after Silent Spring was published, even the President John F. Kennedy knew about it. So publicized. Carson was right about her critics. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars attacking her personality and trying to discredit her claims. She was called a bird lover, a cat lover, a fish lover, priestess of nature, and as well as an hysterical woman and poor scientist. She was attacked by various people, organizations, spending thousands of dollars. At that time, she was suffering in breast cancer as well. So even before Silent Spring came out, and agricultural trade organizations distributed counter arguments to Carson's main points. And Carson was prepared for this kind of criticism. That's very important point as my way of thinking. Before her book was published, it had been reviewed by many scientists and experts. That's the most important thing. She has that given to book through scientists. Carson knew her claims were scientifically sound. That's the most important thing. Here, in last couple of years, most of the social media and even terrestrial media publish various things about the environment, but after a few months, people realized that that was not the real truth. So it is very important to publish something scientifically sound. And other critics misinterpreted her claims. One chemical company wrote their own book called Desolation against the Silent Spring. Not other than, it is Monsanto, well-known Monsanto, published a book against Carson's Silent Spring. See how they actually prepared against Carson. It was the story of how terrible the world would be if pesticide didn't exist. That's the year of the desolate year. Even though Carson had never said that pesticide should be eliminated entirely. Carson believed that pesticides should be used appropriately by educated professionals. The criticisms did not stop Silent Spring from becoming a success. Carson's writing was so understandable and her topic so compelling that the book quickly became the bestseller. Then see what has happened. Reading Carson's book changed many people's idea about the environment and inspired some to take action. That's the success of an environmental communicator. So she could change many people's idea, many people's perception, idea about the environment and inspired some to take action. You can see what has happened next. People wrote to their respective that representatives in Congress and ask them to do something about the misuse of pesticide. That's the beauty. The public, here you think about our scenario, people started writing to their representatives, our MPs or ministers, to do something for the heavy use of misuse of pesticide. When several senators created a committee to research environmental danger, they asked Carson to speak to them about pesticide applied by other persons. Nicely going step by step forward. Carson recommended that the government regulate and reduce pesticide use, and that it ban the most toxic pesticide, including DDT. She said that a citizen of the United States had the right to be secure in his or her own home against the intrusion of poison. President Kennedy understood the importance of Carson. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. Think about our scenario. President Kennedy understood the importance of Carson's book. A miracle, if we think about this region. He asked his science advisory committee to research Carson's claims in Silent Spring. So then in 1963, the committee released a report called The Use of Pesticide. In supported Silent Spring, environmental activists continued to push the government to regulate pesticide. Changes in the federal law in 1964 required companies to prove that something did not cause harm before they could sell it. That's the change of the federal law, purely because of Carson's environmental communication. In 1972, activists pushed for the won ban of DDT, the pesticide that started Carson's research for Silent Spring. See the steps followed after the publishing Carson's book. In 1970, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was created in response to the growing public demand for cleaner water, air, and land. How long it went. Who knows what the world would be like today if Rachel Carson had not written Silent Spring. So that's the power of one environmental communicator or a science communicator. I would like to end this keynote speech with this. Man is a part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitable, a war against himself. Rachel Carson, she died in 1964 after publishing and doing this big change against pesticide. That's the power of science communicator, environmental communicator. If we follow her way, we also can do wonders. Thank you.
For that insightful speech. I will now introduce the panelists of the Environment Education, Communication and Promotion session. Professor Sevandi Jayakodi, Senior Lecturer at the Wayamba University of Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayavilal Fernando, Deputy Director General, Regional Coordinator, Central Environmental Authority, Sri Lanka. Mr. Ajith Veerasundara, Deputy Director General, Environment Education and Awareness Division, Central Environmental Authority, Sri Lanka, and Mr. Jayantha Vattavidana, who is our keynote speaker for the day. Let us now begin with today's proceedings. There will be both oral and poster presentations, and we will be starting with oral presentations. Dear oral presenters, you will be given 10 minutes to present your abstract. You will be then given 5 minutes for the Q&A session, during which the panelists may put forward their questions to the presenters. Sticking to the time limit will be much appreciated. You may start presenting once I read out the title of your abstract. I wish all presenters best of luck. Panelists, are you ready? Title of the abstract: Study on Environmental Reporting Practices of Sri Lanka with special reference to plantation sector companies.
And good afternoon, distinguished panelists. My study title, Study on Environment Reporting Practices of Sri Lankan with special reference of Sri Lankan plantation sector. Okay, this is my presentation outline. You can see my presentation outline, important of this study and my research problem and all, and the finally conclusion of the study. This is the background of study. Environment reporting is the most important topic in this current world scenario, especially with the environmental challenges and global warming situation and climate change situation. Therefore, environment reporting is one of most important topics in the current world, especially in the business sector. Therefore, my study, I began with these findings, with this background. Then this is my research problem. I was identified why organizations are less involving into the environment reporting practices, especially in the Sri Lankan plantation sector. Because the Sri Lankan plantation sector is one of most important sector for the country, especially they are managing very and high sensitive area for the country, especially in the upcountry and low country area, high sensitive and high conservation value area. Therefore, their practices and their day-to-day operations are very important for the public community also, because there are many impact for the public and the resources, natural resources in the country. That is the main reason for selecting this research problem, because that is the only way we can identify their practices and impact of their day-to-day operations to the environment, and finally it is coming to our life. This is the main objective of my study. I can elaborate the objective of my study, the review the significance of environment reporting practices, and identify the main difficulties and the challenges for the environment reporting practices in the corporate sector, and the opportunities to improve and overcome these challenges. These are the main research objective of my study. And as the doctor mentioned, environment communication is one of most important thing. This is environment reporting practices from the private sector and the corporate sector, one of kind of communication mechanism and the transparent mechanism for the public community. That is the significance of my study. And then I conduct the literature survey to identify the environment reporting significance for the environment reporting. Then I realized there was a long journey for the environment reporting practices up to now. There are many the technical and advanced tool to report and the follow as a voluntary practice. And it was started as a kind of newsletters, brochures, and all to communicate and emphasize every organization and individuals' practices related to the environment. Then I identified most popular and the well-known framework for the environment reporting, and especially those reporting cover the sustainability aspect, all three aspects of the under the sustainability. GRI reporting, one of most popular framework for the sustainability reporting, including the environment reporting, and the ESG concept also. Then the IR reporting, integrated reporting, and the ISO 26000 included this environment reporting component. And in the national level, in the Sri Lanka, National Green Reporting System is the main reporting the tool for the environment reporting. This is the current status, which I am conducting the study. I was able to identify the current status of the environment reporting in all the listed sectors in the Colombo Stock Exchange. These the sectors and this the situation of environment reporting practices. Then I identified most important and impactful factors for the environment reporting. One is the lack of political pressure and the legislation and the rules and regulations. Then the organizational factor and the individual factors and the stakeholder engagement and the stakeholder interest. Those are the important factors. And this is my research methodology. I conducted annual report content analysis with the 22 published annual reports of the plantation sector in the Colombo Stock Exchange. Then I conducted semi-structured interview with the higher management and the specialists of the environment reporting practices. These are the feedback through the semi-structured interview. I separate 3 categories with the annual report content analysis: high, moderate, and the low level. That means the most highest number of environment disclosures included to the high category, then the moderate and low. Only 2 companies out of 22 companies reporting high level environment reporting, and the others are majority in the lower level. This is the analysis of those annual report content analysis. 84% of companies representing lower category. That means only very few environment disclosures, 2 to 3 disclosures. Some are not doing any environment disclosure within their annual report. So we can't find any information from their publicly available information categories like a website or brochures or any other mechanism. Therefore, that is the situation. And then I analyze the quality of disclosures. This is the analysis. You can see most of environment related disclosures, energy, biodiversity conservation, water related topics. Only the basic level disclosures available in the majorities report, and some are not doing any disclosures. And the especially in the environment emission related topics, like for the climate change and the global warming situation, there are very few, and only some are just touching the disclosures. That is the situation. And the environment compliance level, most of them are disclosed. That is the situation according to the content analysis. And then I conducted a semi-structured interview to identify the challenges and difficulties. These are the main points highlighted by the interviewers. Lack of top management commitment is the one of most important point for the environment reporting to implement within the organization. Therefore, top management interest and commitment is highly essential for the environment reporting practices. Then the stakeholder interest also is very important, because the every organization is trying to satisfy and convince the stakeholders. Therefore, without having their interest or their engagement for the environment reporting, no any organizations trying to engage with the environment reporting practices. Therefore, interest of stakeholder is very important. Then the high cost involvement with the technical aspect and this technical expert hiring, all the things highly costly. That is the one of most important challenge for the organization. And the regulatory situation. There is no any mandatory regulation for the environment reporting in the country level, and especially in the international level also. There is very few mandatory legislation for that. Then the competent staff and the organization policies and procedures also very impactful for the environment reporting. And the finally concludes as a conclusion, only the 84% of companies doing the very low level or absence of the environment reporting within their publicly available reports or information, and only the 5% of companies doing the advanced environment reporting practices. Then I can conclude, previously I mentioned that impact factors directly impact to the organizations to implement the environment reporting practices. Okay, these are the factors, and then I'm going to conclude my presentation and hope to answer any question from the panel. Thank you very much. An important factor, that is the financial healthiness and the stability. One of important the characteristic of these two companies, because within their long journey, they were able to establish healthy financial situation, and then they gradually started to move into the sustainability practices and maintain the transparency level of their practices because of their healthy the financial situation and stakeholder engagement also, because from the investors and the stock from the other main stock the investors, there was some kind of engagement and the pressure to disclose their situation of environment practices. Those are the main 2 points.
What are the advantages for them for, on reporting these things?
Yeah, actually, that is also one of the important point I was highlight to the study. The long termly, they are entertaining some competitive edge from this kind of reporting practices especially in the international market, because the plantation sector mostly engage with the directly or indirectly for the export market. Therefore, from their buyers and from their buying countries, there was a competitive edge for them. That is the one of important advantage they highlighted, and I also understood that point. And the long termly, they are getting some more benefit than to the other companies, because that environment reporting practices kind of the evaluation for them to optimize their practices and reduce the cost. Those are the main advantages for those companies.
Sector, I hope most of the companies should be in the field of tea,
Yeah.
rubber, and coconut. So one thing we are bit aware is that most of the plantation companies, particularly in the tea trade, right now they are, running as private sector companies, and most of the time they utilize the existing forest cover, the what you call the vegetation, and particularly the tree plantations that have been raised couple of years, decades ago, to provide protection and the conservation, particularly in the hill countries. And do you think that they are a bit reluctant to disclose or enter into the reporting system just because that they are not really contributing to the enhancement of the this conservation, forest conservation, or the environmental conservation, as against they are utilizing or extracting much more resources from the the natural resources? Is that the reason for not reporting or anything else? And secondly, is there any relationship between the reporting system and the the ISO, international standard requirements, especially the plantation sector who are engaged in export market?
Yeah, actually, for the first point, there is an opportunity to practice some kind of greenwashing system or something through this kind of reporting practices, because there is no any the legislative situation or the mandatory situation. Therefore, that room available. But when we are reviewing their number of report within throughout the kind of period, 5 to 10 years, we can identify those kind of misleading information also through analyzing the long-term reports. And finally, for their long-term benefit, they are obtaining for the genuine effort from their actual practices, because we can hide something within the very shorter period, but finally it will the disclose by the public or a media or somewhere. Therefore, I conducted that report content analysis through the very 5 to 10 years especially for the highly reporting companies. Then I identify there are some opportunities to improve, but they are having some good practices, the genuine effort. And the other side, the ISO and the international level, especially the GRI is the main reporting framework. Therefore, that also very advantage for those companies to emphasize their practices very voluntary manner.
Frameworks and policies in this country.
Considering this,
yes.
I only considered mandatory reporting legislative the rules and regulation. Then I didn't found any mandatory reporting requirement from the rules and regulation. But then I identified that the National Green Reporting System is the one of voluntary but very comprehensive reporting framework for the companies. That are very few companies align with that, and they are doing their reporting practices through the NGRS, National Green Reporting System.
There is a policy document, I can remember, published in 2005 or 6. Policy documents for cleaner productions.
Cleaner production.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that is not a mandatory one.
Not mandatory.
Yeah,
it's
that is for
only a policy.
Yeah, kind of policy, and I think that is the next step. Need to develop some the sector level the documents, and the policies customization also very important. But the holistic, there are energy, environment, and the cleaner production policies also available. But for the ground level practice, that is also very important.
Awareness amongst youth and integrating youth perspectives into the consultative process in Sri Lanka. Are youths willing to engage?
Is part of a component of work we did for the preparation of Sri Lanka's 6th national report for the Convention on Biological Diversity. In 2018, EFL was tasked as a technical partner to prepare this report, which assessed Sri Lanka's progress in meeting its national biodiversity targets. And also we updated the current status of our biodiversity using expert opinion and updated and validated information. The whole process is a very inclusive consultative process, and we had national level, regional, local, community level, as well as youth who were engaged. So why is youth such a critical group to engage with, and why did we prioritize this? In Sri Lanka, the last population census in 2012 calculated that 48.4% of the country's population are under the age of 30. Therefore, the integration of these people's vision into national environmental policy and assessment is vital. This is a responsibility of everyone engaged in governance, that we integrate their perspectives into our evaluations and our processes. So how did we go about this process? What did we do? We assessed their knowledge and current awareness levels on environmental issues, policy plans, laws, web questionnaires, and focus groups. And we also had an environmental education and engagement component. So to assess the current awareness amongst youth, we had focus groups, and we did focus groups in Colombo, in Wayamba, and in Jaffna. And these are people who engage in these focus groups were often university students who are already studying in environmental sciences or biology or zoology, or are volunteering their time and engaged in societies such as the YZA. And we had this youth code in the SAP, which was similar to what we had national level and regional level stakeholders do, and they gave us codes that prior to moving into doing this evaluation and doing the scoring process, we gave this youth a brief presentation about NBSAP, about CBD, so that they were familiar with the process and the work that was ongoing. Then we also sampled a much larger cohort of the population. We sampled 712 youth representing 25 districts with 90.6% aged between 17 and 25 at Yompore in March 2018. Yompore is this massive national gathering with over 5,000 youth assembled at this conference. Topics, and then we asked them questions such as, are topics of biodiversity and conservation adequately covered in the school and university curriculum? An overwhelming percentage, in fact 68%, said no, which was a key takeaway. Then we also asked them how they're engaged with biodiversity conservation, and 42% mentioned that school was the primary way that they got engaged with biodiversity conservation. And I think this is really important to take away, because this emphasizes the importance of integrating a lot of these learnings, and helping enhance this understanding really starts at the school level. Actively engaging in biodiversity conservation, we found that 22% are involved in conserving ecosystems, 20% are learning and promoting, but only 3% were actually involved in the monitoring and recording. And this was also a takeaway, because something that we should promote in our analysis we came about, which was that we emphasized on, was the promotion of citizen science projects. So are youths willing to engage in biodiversity conservation? And 27% said they already do. A small percentage, 2%, said I'm not willing to, and they're not interested. But overwhelmingly, 71% said I am not but willing to engage in. So this means that we have a population of young people out there who are keen to get engaged in this process, and it is now our responsibility to bring them into that and give them those opportunities to engage. Another component of our work we did was we did engage in environmental education. And for this, we established a social media platform called conservationchat.lk on Facebook. And this was launched at Yom Kippur in March 2018. Within 3 days of launching, we had over 3,200 people liking the page and following us on Facebook. We developed educational content, informative content, like these drawings you're seeing when artists develop. This drawing highlighted the pangolin trade and brought awareness to the illegal trade of pangolins. And it reached over 19,000 people, and over 200 times this post was shared on Facebook. This highlights that one of the best ways probably to engage our youth today is using creative ways and creative means, and social media can be a powerful tool in this regard. We also developed educational content and videos that were shown at our meetings and discussions. And we also encouraged youth to share their conservation stories. And we received a lot of great conservation stories. But this video, which I'm not going to be able to show you in full, but I'm going to skim through, laid out the NBSAP, what the NBSAP was all about, and the CBD. Trilingual, so we could reach a cross-section of people through it. Just to wrap up, I'm going to talk about some of the recommendations that came out of our analysis. And one of the key things was that we emphasize on the need that environmental education needs to be integrated into the national curriculum. More national awareness campaigns and programs need to be done to raise awareness. It is important that, and it's vital that national policy and international obligations are communicated with efficacy to our youth. We need increased investment across the board in government, private sector, in areas of research, innovation, and development at secondary and tertiary educational levels, because this is expected to directly feed into strengthening the green job market as well. And as I mentioned earlier, something we would also promote is promotion of citizen science is vital. To wrap up, I just have some acknowledgements. I would like to acknowledge the Convention on Biological Diversity Secretariat, who helped support the work, the Biodiversity Secretariat here in Sri Lanka at the ministry, who were absolutely instrumental, and without their support, the success of this project could have been such a wonderful success. Also, we would also like to acknowledge UNDP, who were the financial partners and financially back this project. Thank you.
A wonderful presentation. And now the paper is open for the discussion. And the first question I would like to ask, I mean, not really a question, that you mentioned about 3% of the youths engaging reporting and monitoring. Did you see any difference of those 3% of, particularly those 3% against others?
Thank you for your question. And yes, it's a good question, the point you raised. The data set that we had 712 people answer a question here. So it is difficult for me to say, because we didn't observe in detail in terms of what the differences were in terms of their way they engaged, in terms of and their perspectives, in terms of how they felt about the environment on an individual basis. This is a large group, large cohort, so I can't go into too much detail. But when we did run the questionnaire, we explained that, are you involved in any form of citizen science? Are you recording any data on biodiversity related, fauna, flora related? Are you engaged in the process in any form of monitoring or making any records, field notes? But unfortunately, I cannot answer that question directly because I don't have that data or that information.
Ms. Akbar Ali, during your survey, did you find any difference between male and female?
There was a difference. Definitely, males are more actively engaged, and it was a larger cohort of people. We also who turned up at these focus group discussions. A takeaway was that there was a disparity in that there was, especially in the focus group, we felt it where the male cohort tended to be stronger and more actively engaged. And there was an example I can give you from one of the groups we had in Jaffna, where we had a student who had started an entrepreneurial project. I think he termed it Idea Factory, where he would ask people to come and give back PET bottles, and they would get in return a rupee or 2 rupees back, so that they would send this off for recycling. So those kind of activities, yes, there was a feeling that this was done by males more so than females.
Thanks.
Mr. Akbar Ali, for your nice, Mrs. Akbar Ali, for your nice presentation. As you said, I think nearly 48% of the, in your survey, you have found that nearly 48%, I think, they are from the school sector, and they are very much aware about the, what you call the biodiversity aspects. And this is not a question, just a clarification, because the Central Environmental Authority also have engaged in educating, particularly the children in the school sector for more than a couple of decades, 3 to 4 decades. Did you find any, a sizable number of students who have got their knowledge or awareness about the biodiversity conservation, or else in large, that environmental conservation from the various type of programs that have been carried out, particularly by the CA, because not only the, the educational programs in terms of providing, the information, leaflets and all that, we are also conducting through what you call the environmental pioneer program, which have been embedded in the school curriculum system. And even the what you call the education ministry has made it mandatory to implement it all the schools in the country. So did you find any sizable number that they have got their awareness or the engagement, particularly in this biodiversity conservation sector, through the initiatives implemented by the CEA? Just to get some feedback from you.
So what I can say is that when we asked them and we ran this questionnaire in terms of what percentage from where did they get engaged in conservation, where did they learn, 42% said at school. So, but I don't have, again, unfortunately, a breakdown in terms of at school.
Dear presenter, we cannot hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Your microphone is turned off, I suppose.
My microphone is on.
Yes, now you're audible. Can you please repeat your answer again?
Sorry about that. What I was mentioning was that to answer the question, yeah. So from the survey we ran, what we found was that 42% got involved or engaged and learned about biodiversity conservation from school. But we did not go into that level of breakdown in terms of where that source of information came. But I'm certain that because if CA is engaging with the school system and such a large percentage is engaged through the school system, that this would certainly have an impact in terms of as to why that we're seeing so many people learn about these issues and engage at the school level.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Akbar Ali. To appreciate your wonderful work, we'll give a round of applause, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now you can leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the lunch break. We will resume here at 2:45 p.m. Thank you. Gentlemen, we will continue with the rest of the presentation for today's afternoon. Presenters, you may begin once I read out the title of your abstract.
Colombo Educational Zone Sri Lanka, conducted under the supervision of Dr. Savitri Ranasinghe. Let's get started. Environmental problems today is the responsible activity of the people. It is because of their lack of understanding of the environment and attachment to it. So environmental education would be a sustainable tools in protecting the environment and creating awareness among the society. So it is important to make humans more and more aware about the importance of the environmental conservation and its existence. And it's good if we can start it with the child of today who is the adult of tomorrow. In this sense, Sri Lanka is in a step forward. The Environmental Pioneer Program, launched in 1984, is conducted by the Central Environmental Authority in collaboration with the Ministry of Education under the theme of "The Environment Protect Us, Let Us Protect the Environment." The aim of the program is directing the future generation of Sri Lanka towards an environmentally friendly code of conduct. This program is conducted at the school level for children from grade 6 to 13. It has 5 levels: Environmental Pioneer Badge, Green Badge, Silver Badge, Gold Badge, and finally Presidential Badge. The students are assessed and then awarded badges based on the fulfillment of defined activities of each badge. This involves a lot of resources. However, one of the key issues that have been identified is the number of students involved in EPP program get reduced from green badge when it comes to the presidential badge. So it is important to identify the constraints in moving forward. So this study was focused on teachers because they are the main stakeholders in this process. So the survey was conducted to study the teachers' perspective on Environmental Pioneer Program in Colombo Educational Zone. Objectives were to explore the advantages of EPP, analyze the problem faced by teachers in the implementation of the EPP, and evaluate the recommendation given by them to improve the Environmental Pioneer Program in future. So this study was conducted in year 2019. A structured questionnaire survey was used and 22 schools in Colombo Educational Zone were covered. The data gathered were analyzed using MS Excel and Likert 5-point rating scale. Let's look at the results and discussions. This survey covered all the 5 levels of batch, all the schools which having 5 levels of batch. And also it's clear from this bar graph that schools have gone long period, but most of them schools have gone long period in the EPP process, but most of them has not got presidential badge yet. So it's important to understand what is the reason behind this. Of the program, all the teachers agree that this EPP program helps to create students who are more sensitive to the environment. So if we list the advantages, they said that EPP helps students to gain environmental awareness and learn environmental beautification. It helps to students to improve disciplines and eco-friendly habitats. It's give them teamwork learning, and it's them give them opportunity to leadership, as well as it's help supports presidential badge holders at university entrance. Then, if we look into the constraints, there are 11 constraints identified by teachers in the implementation of the EPP. Among some, they identified as the difficulties faced by EPP students also. So if we take all of them, the major constraint identified is the time. The EPP is conducted as an extracurricular activity in schools by teachers. So the teachers has to do the EPP program while covering their syllabus. So they have to spend some extra time on this program. All the students also has to spend some extra time in this program. So they are having difficulties in gathering all students at a time and conducting awareness program, collaborating with them, communicating with them. So since there is no proper time allocation, it has become a major barrier on their programs. Other thing is lack of facilities and resources. If I take an example, to plant a tree, it's need a land space. If a student want to write a report in an aesthetic or historically important landscape, student has to do some researches or do some survey. So it needs some facilities like computers. In case if a teacher want to take the student for a workshop or a seminar conducted by CA or CA, so it involves some cost of transport. So 50% of the respondent identified lack of facilities and resources is a barrier for moving forward. Then if we take the support received from relevant stakeholders, support received from officers from CA, principal, educational directors, and parents were at satisfactory level. However, further involvements are needed to make the bond between them more strengthful. Then some teachers, 32% of the teachers require more training programs on the EPP. Because they said the CA conducted training programs on EPP, but it was covered, every aspects were covered within a day in an expedited manner. So it was difficult for them to grasp all the ideas, all the activities related to the EPP at once. So they request to do it in a split manner in 2 or 3 days and also continuously to update their knowledge. Here there is 23% without no trainings, but those teachers who were newly appointed to the program. Identified is a language barrier. It's typically on Tamil faced by Tamil schools, but they said where the materials and some documents shared with them is in another language, so they are difficult to understand that, and most of the time officers coordinate with them in another language, so they are having a issue in collaborating with the officers and moving forward in the EPP. So it needs to be addressed. Then if we look into the recommendations, 24 recommendations were received regarding the improvement of the EPP program. They gave recommendations to improve the student participation, teachers participation, and overall EPP. If we take the core 5 recommendations, they were allocate separate time in the timetable for the EPP and allocate enough resources and facilities and stakeholder support, continuously giving them training programs and awareness programs, and also reviewing listed pioneer activities in a manner that is feasible to the context, that it's practically achievable by the teachers in the program. Rather than to that, they give me to recommendation to improve the student participation. But them are allowing the students to visit to schools at least once a week with pioneer uniform, and allocating some marks at final term test for the EPP activities. They think this is a good strategy to attract the students for the program. Then also they prefer it's good if it can be possible to provide allowances for them for going out for the term EPP related activities, and if it is good if we can provide some scholarship for them, recognizing their hard work in the EPP. Also, they gave some suggestions for CA to, rather than focusing on the EPP activities, conducting other environmental related competitions, poem competitions, essay competition, drawing competitions, and giving students certificates, and also trying to improve the obtaining support of private parties like private resource persons and private environmental clubs and NGOs. So this will reduce the burden on them in terms of conducting environmental related programs in their schools, and it will help reduce the cost. Then they gave some more recommendations. They preferred that it's good if CA can conduct appreciation program for students and teachers and give them opportunities to share their experiences, and rather than giving badges only, it's good if CA can give a certificate along with badge for each badge, and organizing field trips and allocating adequate count of teachers that address language problems, and continuously supervise and guiding them to improve the EPP program. So these are the recommendations given by them. So if we conclude, it's clear that there are constraints faced by teachers in charge of EPP in maintaining the environmental pioneer group active in the school and moving forward. And it's a timely requirement to understand the contemporary limitation of EPP and attempting to address at least some possible limitations for the betterment of the program in future. So then the recommendations, this is derived based on the recommendation given by the teachers. Since the schools are defining the resources and abilities, and they are defining their locations also. If you take the cultural, social aspects also, they are widely differing. So analyzing the availability of resources and facilities in the schools and guiding the schools accordingly related to the EPP would be useful. Also, it is suggested that individually requesting schools to submit a framework or action plan to the implementation of EPP. This could include monitoring plan, responsible persons along the hierarchy, and the support requested from the CA, including training programs and awareness programs, and whatever the communication needs and coordination needs, it shall be included in that action plan. Also, we suggest to add strategies to increase the recognition of EPP within the society. This will be helpful to attract the students, parents, and some private parties, and giving weight for the EPP program. It will increase the publicity of the program. So it will be helpful for students in gaining some value from it. So that's all. Thank you.
Nice presentation. Now the paper is on for the discussion.
Ms. Devi, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I was fascinated to hear one recommendation, that is strategies for the recognition for EPP. What do you mean by that?
Yes, ma'am. That is what they say is that parents take a major role, one of the major role in guiding the students for the program. So we need to attract students and parents. So it should come to the society. Society should the program should be popularized. So it's in another way, it's help to give a proper recognition for the program in the private institutions. So in the long term, it may be helpful for students in their career development also, when they show that they are involved in the EPP. So increasing the taking action to make the program more aware among the society. Taking it to the society will be definitely an advantage of the progress of the implementation of the program in future.
Ms. Devi, that this kind of programs you mentioned as extracurricular programs, but in education, in the field of education, I mean, this kind of programs are considered that as co-curricular, because I mean, it is needed for the development of the total development of the student. Is there a way to get some recognition at DC A levels? I mean, university selection. There are some national level programs like President Scout, and also some other that the Hampasel, the final certificate, like they have some, they actually allocate some marks, extra marks for that. Do we have such recognition for the presidential level?
Yes.
members?
Yes, sir. The presidential award badge winners are given 4 marks at the university entrance. It's mentioned in the book of the related to the environmental pioneer program published by CEA. Hello, I can't hear. Yes. Hello. Hello. I couldn't hear.
Okay.
Yeah, now okay.
It's okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the abstract, you mentioned that suggested that an action plan of the EPP for the betterment of program, including the monitoring system.
Yeah.
But the presentation, you didn't discuss this matter. What the
No,
purpose of?
in the recommendation I mentioned the action plan should be developed individually by the schools, including the monitoring plan. In the second recommendation, I mentioned that schools should develop actions plans. That what I mean suggested by that is if we take the schools in the Colombo educational zones, they are differing in the context, social background, cultural background, and also they differ in the facilities mostly from school to school. So the teachers have to, the level of efforts teachers have to made in making the program forward is differ according to the context. Context actually, what I understood is context also has an impact on the program, because teachers have to make more effort in some areas to making the students more environmental sensitive with their social and economic background. So most schools, even though there are land space, they said land space is limited. But activities in the EPP, there are activities for tree planting. So that's why I suggested that. So they are having an opportunity to bringing their problems and according to that develop their action plan, and so they can request CA what are the trainings program or facilities or helps they need. So CA also having an opportunity to monitor them and guide them accordingly. So other than that, all the stakeholders, including the educational directors, commissioners, principals, all will get a responsibility on the program, because I suggested to include the responsibilities along the hierarchy also. So the teachers will get more collaboration with the all the stakeholders of the program. So it will give weight and responsibilities for the all stakeholders. Also, it will improve, give an opportunity to for CA to understand what is the school individually, what are the constraints in the schools. So maybe we can slightly modify the activities. In some schools, regarding the tree planting, what some school teachers mentioned is land space is not enough. So we tell people, to students to do the tree planting in home and show them the progress. But in the same sense, one teacher mentioned that there are students in flats, so they are having limitations. And another teacher mentioned we are telling students to maintain the plants, but there are students who don't have financial capabilities to buy those things and ask their parents. So if we take individually schools, what I suggested is it will give an opportunity to understand the consent faced by each school. So it will give CA us an opportunity to back them up and push them towards the program as the way they can. So that's why I suggested that.
Okay, thank you very much, Devi. I think time is passing by, but just a kind of a clarification from you and sharing some experience. I think the CA has taken a lot of efforts to, that popularize this program and also implement this program as much schools as possible. Now, I think you have done your evaluation basically the way I understood in terms of the number of students or the number of environmental pioneers produced by through this program, rather than in terms of the quality, quality in the sense the environmental real educational side that they have gained through this program. Because I know from the CA side, I think from time to time every year we are giving as much as possible lot of resources, what you call the other kind of facilities, to the extent that all presidential badge holders have been taken for an overseas tour for the last 5 years. Except for the last 2 years, but for continuously 4 to 5 years, they have been taken overseas, including the teachers. Now, because I have some experience working in this field, especially one of our officers, Ms. Sujiva, she prepared a kind of list of subject areas where the students can gain the subject knowledge in line with their school curricula through our program, but 1 year in advance to their school curriculum, right? Through our badges. So if you can inculcate to try to educate the parents as well as the teachers, in addition to the physical resources and other facilities providing to popularize this program, the level of knowledge that the students can gain through this program in line with, in parallel with their school curriculum, I think that could be a kind of a booster to, popularize this program. What about your experience on that?
I agree with that.
This aspect.
The thing I just got one opportunity. I just got an opportunity. That means I surveyed one school relevant to the presidential badge holders. Actually, as said, they are having a lot of opportunities because they have to do a project work. And also, one more thing I want to mention is this study was conducted in 2019. By now, CA has made a lot of progress, even in popularizing the Environmental Pioneer Program. Now one TV program is ongoing, as I aware. So it's good if we can it will give a booster to the student in additional. As you mentioned, it will give, if we can do that, it will give a booster for the student in gaining different type of skills and making them forward to their career development in this sector. It will make them more responsible persons if we can add more practical works, projects like this.
Thank you very much. We have to appreciate the work done by JSS Devi and EMS Ranasinghe. Shall we give a round of applause to appreciate the work done by both the authors? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am.
To the next presentation. The title of the abstract, Understanding Environmental Behavior and Concern, a comparative analysis between Generation Y and Z, authored by Fairuza and Shazli.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to you all. My name is Fatma Fairuza and I thank you all for joining me in this presentation on Understanding Environmental Behavior and Concern, a comparative analysis between generations Y and Z. Environment. Is there a link in our age that determines how we make decisions for the betterment of the environment while we forego a want or a need? Why does one individual decide to segregate waste while the other decides not? This is a picture of a waste management site in an agricultural island where discarded green material has the chance of being reused for compost. Through the presentation, I will begin with an introduction and background information into the study, share the theoretical and conceptual framework, followed by a description of the methodology, results, discussion, and a conclusion. Human activities have altered and influenced the environment of Maldives in the past decades at increasing speed, ranging from increasing levels of waste production, littering, increased use of single-use plastic, altering coastal zones leading to erosion, increase in vehicle emissions, unmonitored use of chemicals for agricultural purposes, and many more. Where do the sustainable development pillars stand for the country? Here is a picture of Kurudufushi Island before and after reclamation. The island lost 12 hectares of wetland for the development of an airport. How far are we willing to go in the name of development? What is the difference between for and against responsible decision making? Is it the younger generation or the next who stands for the rights and expresses responsibility for the environment and society as a whole? For my research justification, I focused on connecting individual behavior to the generational cohort theory, as I was unable to find any research on this field in the local context. The study would help understand communities' views on the environment and root causes to behavioral changes, and it can also be used as a baseline for the country. The objective of this research was to understand the difference between generations Y and Z on pro-environmental behavior, and also to determine whether there is a connection with post-materialistic attitudes. An adaptive questionnaire based on ISSP 2010 Environment 3 basic questionnaire was made using Google Forms, and for validation purposes, the questionnaire was pre-tested before distribution. And I used Microsoft Excel as a tool for result analysis. Data was collected for a period of 16 days, and data was obtained from a sample size of 20 students attending 2 programs of environmental management and civil engineering at the Maldives National University. And a reference scale developed as a guidance for data analysis. My theoretical framework focused on pro-environmental behavior under the influence of environmental psychology, environmental behavior, environmental concern, and post-materialism connected with generational cohort theory. My conceptual framework was based on individual level variables taken from the generational cohort theory, pro-environmental behaviors combined with influences from external and internal factors influenced by environmental awareness and environmental knowledge. Key areas of the questionnaire were based on personal concern, knowledge, awareness, and perception. The results proved that the overall environmental attitude of the participants for Generation Y was higher than Generation Z, which I will explain. When assessed on concern about environmental issues, responses showed 100% concern from Generation Y and 60% concern from Generation Z. Regarding knowledge on the causes and solutions to environmental problems, for Generation Y, it was 80%, and for Generation Z, it was 45% combined. One of the main highlights of the study was that most of the participants from both generations agreed that domestic waste disposal and climate change to be the most important environmental problem for Maldives as a whole. Apart from the main results, there were some interesting findings which I will highlight on. When asked how often you reduce energy or fuel consumption at home for environmental reasons, Generation Y is shown to have the higher result. When asked how often do you choose to save or reuse water for environmental reasons, more than 50% for both generations chose the option always and often. When assessed on the willingness to prioritize in order to protect the environment, an overall 90% response rate came from both generations. When assessed on air pollution caused by cars, both generations agreed that it is extremely and very dangerous for the environment. The same response was reported for air pollution by industry also. There were cases where both generations expressed the same level of knowledge and awareness, such as 70% from both generations agreed that air pollution caused by pesticide and chemicals used in farming to be extremely and very dangerous for the environment. And 90% from both generations agreed that a rise in the world temperature caused by climate change is extremely and very dangerous for the environment. This was an interesting finding as both generations agreed quite clearly that even if some countries are doing more to protect the world environment than other countries, in general, Maldives is doing too little in that context. A setback in data collection was found out from the results as most of the participants had chosen the option neither agree nor disagree to answer questions. For example, belief too often in science and not enough in feelings and faith by 45% of the respondents. A higher attitude may have been scored under the influence of social media platforms that put the spotlight on current trends in terms of environmental issues. And the study may also have been influenced based on the educational background of the participants. The results further clarify that people born into a specific time period have the tendency to share the same experiences and have different values and attitudes compared to the next time period. Thus, the research question was answered for generational cohort theory to be linked to pro-environmental behavior. As a conclusion, it was found out that data analysis showed that a comparative analysis proved to be for generation by participants with a higher score in pro-environmental behavior than Generation Z. As there was a limitation experience in terms of the questionnaire, it is highly recommended to evaluate such tools beforehand through adaptation as each country and region differ in environmental context. And it is also a recommendation to understand how to increase environmental concern and promote environmental behaviors to ensure the longevity of a harmonious relationship between communities and the environment while meeting the sustainable development goals. I plan to repeat the study for other communities within the country in the near future as it is a continuous learning process to help make a better change. This is a list of some of the references that I use, and I look forward to answering your questions and noting any suggestions and comments you may have. Thank you.
All the way from Bangladesh for this symposium, and also thank you for sharing your interesting findings. I really am fascinated to see these results. I have one small question. Why is that your sample size this small? Why you decided to go for only 10 respondents for each cohort?
Thank you so much. I'm from Maldives, I'm sorry. Not Bangladesh. For the question on the small sample size, for the timeline that I was given, I was only able to get 20 respondents. This was a study done for my final year project. That's why the small sample size. It was conducted for only 16 days. So, and for the bachelors who were attending the university, they were in their last semester of the degree program. So I understand myself being busy, they were also unable to help me out, fill the survey questionnaire.
Okay.
So only 20 students were able to help me out.
Okay, because I feel that if you increase the sample size, as well as if they are coming from, because your samples are all university students who are with a certain education level, I thoroughly recommend you to repeat this experiment with students as well as those who have not got into secondary education and compare the generations, because that will provide some important insights into how you can handle these generations in Maldives. That's just a recommendation.
Thank you so much. I look forward to do it.
that as what Professor Sevandi mentioned, it is that my view also Y said you differentiate only by considering the date of birth or birth years.
Yes.
There may be other social factors and educational levels, and you are, and also if you get your, cohort members from different islands, that there may be some cultural differences as well. So then you can get a better account. You can consider the various other factors also with this of the two generations. Then you can get a more clear idea, not only the year of birth, but also the other reasons, other factors also play a major role in their deciding factors, and also the sensitivity to the environment and all. So anyway, that you have done a marvelous job, that we should appreciate the work done by two authors, F. Pairusa and Shasil A. We'll give a round of applause to appreciate both the authors. Thank you very
so
much.
much.
On to the next presentation. The title of the abstract, Developing a Conceptual Therapeutic Garden for the Ecotourism Sector in Sri Lanka, a Perception Analysis, authored by Pereira, Kudavidanage, Udayakumara, Wijayasekara, Dizoisa, Kodituwaku, and Pereira.
Meshika Pereira from Sabaragama University of Sri Lanka. Today I am presenting my undergraduate research findings. My today topic is developing a conceptual therapeutical garden for ecotourism sector in Sri Lanka, a perception analysis. These are my supervisors, Dr. Inoka Kudavidanage, Dr. EPN Udekumara, Dr. Hasinta Vijayasekara from Olama from my university, and architect Isudi Soisa, Sri Lanka Institute of Architects, and Dr. N.D. Kodituaku, Institute of Indigenous Medicine, University of Colombo. As introduction, in modern society, people are suffering from various health and social issues due to their exhaustive lifestyles and stressful environment. Therefore, they look in some self-help from natural environment. If people are directly or indirectly contact with the nature, they could gain a lot of benefits from nature. In this situation, therapeutical garden or healing garden concept were developed by different sector specialists in different fields. Therapeutical garden concept is not a modern concept. Those are developed in ancient period also. Padua, Pisa, Bologna are three famous Italian cities that have a therapeutical garden. When considered on the Sri Lankan context, therapeutical garden concept is ancient knowledge to Sri Lanka. Ranmaswin is one of the most ancient therapeutical garden concept. And also, Sri Lanka is very famous for the herbal medicines. When we consider the therapeutical garden, they are provide basically medicines and also ecosystem services and economical values. But the problem is, with current stress on the global land use. Finding allocation a large segment of land for a one purpose, single purpose is a critical and challenging factor. Therefore, our research focused on compound land use function to design a sustainable, eco-friendly therapeutical garden and identify the potential for the therapeutical garden and optimal condition. Here we compound herbal tourism, conservation of medicinal plant, Ayurveda knowledge, and landscape design for establish a sustainable, eco-friendly, modern therapeutical garden. Our main objective is to develop a conceptual therapeutical garden of sustainable, eco-friendly for the tourism industry. Our specific objectives are to identify the tourist perception and select the most suitable components. These are the study sites I select for the data collection purposes for the questionnaire survey: Sigiriya, Kandy, Udawalawa, and Gaul. Our research was conducted on the three main steps: perception analysis, preparation of medicinal plant documentary, and design a sustainable model. In first step, we done a questionnaire survey for local and both foreign tourists and analyzed by SPSS 25. And step 2, we identify most suitable medicinal plant by primary and secondary data sources, and then we confirm them by Ayurvedic expert. In step 3, we design a concept model by using architectural knowledge and landscape practices and develop a model by 3 architectural softwares: AutoCAD, SketchUp, and Lumion 5.0. When we consider about the results and discussion, perception analysis, we should first consider about all 44 individual visitors are answered for the all 14 questions. We use Likert scale questions. From that, 97% of individual visitors exceed the 50% acceptance level. And these are the 50 components we propose for the medicinal garden. All of them are above 50% acceptance levels. Therefore, we decide to add those components for the garden with some changes in some factors. When we consider about the region selection, we mainly focus to consider about the tourist perception, and then we consider about the climatic condition, topography, soil, and other resource availability factors. This is the step 2 outcomes. Here we design medicinal plant documentary. This is the example page of the document. These are the 2 medicinal plant. We have 150. They all are here we mention their use, medicinal usage, their architectural structure, and so on. From 150 medicinal plant, 26 are rejected due to the regional conditions and growing difficulties, and other 124 medicinal plants are grouped into terrestrial, aquatic, fruit, and poisonous plant. Our third aspect is design a medicinal garden concept. Bottom small one is the satellite image. Then the second one is the developed model without trees, and the third one is the final one. And this is the important components of that garden, and that is upper one is the first pencil graph of mine, and this is the design we develop. And this is the 3D architecture model. This is the Ibbankatuwa Lake. We select actual land in Ibbankatuwa area. And here we enter into the main building. This is a consulting room with Ayurvedic doctors. And this is the main lobby of the area. Now we are entering into the medicinal garden. Actually, these plants are not similar to our Sri Lankan plants because these softwares still doesn't have our own native plant species, but their structures are some sort of similar for our proposed trees. System. Night sky watch in 3 houses. These large rocks and trees are actually in the actual land. We first establish them in the land, our design, and then apply our design to it. And this is sand path, library area, and waiting area. Flat rock path with medicinal value rock. First board pod number 1. Now we are entering into the water path. These in here, these plants are aquatic medicinal. Changing rooms. This is the natural pool. Actually, this color is not blue. Fish therapy area and fish feeding center. And this is the meditation area. This is the fruit garden. Here we use own harvesting method. Therefore, these plants are not large and big trees, accessible heights. This is the restaurant and food court, separate recycle bins. Now we are entering into the natural cabana path. These cabanas are made by natural and sustainable materials. When you consider about the roof angle of the cabanas, those are made for obtain a maximum sunlight for the solar power generation. And this is the wastewater treatment plant and recycle center. These are my conclusion. Tourists are prefer to experience Sri Lankan cultural, environmental, and medicinal values. For this concept, 97% of tourists exceed the 50% acceptance level. 124 plant species are selected for the Dambulla region, and this is the ideal model therapeutical garden for Dambulla region, according to the architectural and Ayurvedic knowledge. Thank you very much.
For your wonderful work and wonderful, nice presentation. Now paper is open for the discussion.
Ms. Pereira, now that this concept has been developed, you have also done it in a real location, all the modeling. I want to know whether you have found an investor.
Professor, actually, I had an investor in past, but I think he is for the money generation purposes only. Therefore, because I'm a natural resources student, so I don't like to do that. If I got a correct, if I can contact with the right person, I like to develop this one.
Okay, because what I see is that for the first time, I'm seeing entrepreneurship emerging in here along with the science and education. Maybe with your supervisors, the next step that you need to take is to ensure that this dream design comes to reality. And I think that's where the sustainability lies. And that's where you can actually